time for a change?
Yeah.
Wow.
By the way, that's on me, not you guys.
Wow.
Starting on time. All right. Everybody's good? We're ready? All right, with that, I'll call to order the Thursday, July 17th, 2025 College Township Council Meeting. If everyone in the room who can stand, please stand. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. First item on tonight's agenda is public open discussion. Anybody in the audience like to address council on anything that's not already listed on the agenda? No? Janet, anything that's not on the agenda? Kimberly's here with you, Ben?
Yes.
Okay. That'll move us to new agenda items. Excuse me. Council, any request here for new agenda items? Same for the public. Anybody like to request council consider additional agenda items, either for tonight or future meetings? Seeing none, we'll move on to special presentations, which we have none. So that takes us to plans. By my agenda now, we are down to one plan, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that plan tonight is P2, Gray Star Development, University and Hastings Student Housing Sketch Plan. This is not an action item, so we'll move right to a presentation. Everybody has a PowerPoint already in their packet or presentation. So
Hi.
the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Hi, my name is Kristen Sudi. I'm with HRG Engineering. On behalf of Gray Star Development, here to present the sketch plan update for the student housing facility to be on Penn State University. Penn State will be leasing the property to Gray Star for this development. Go ahead. The project will be located in the existing long-term parking lots at the corner of East College Avenue and University Drive. You can see that a little bit further out version of the same photograph. College Avenue down at the bottom, University on the left. College Township is in the upper right-hand corner. The majority of this development is in State College Borough, with a little bit of the leased parking area, some stormwater management, some traffic impacts being seen in College Township. Right now, the only thing on the property is an existing utility shed. This shows where the facility is in State College Borough, Sub-District 5 of the UPD. And then the next slide shows that it's just outside of College Township, same Sub-District 05 in the UPD. This will be strictly student housing. This is not residential, this is student housing dormitories, 1,500 bed, approximate number we have right now. We are meeting all the lot requirements, the building height requirements, the density, and the open space. Again, parking, 1,500 beds. We'll have one parking space for every 2 beds, and that's the same requirement in State College Borough as it is here in College Township. Here's the layout of the project. We have 4 buildings, 2 along Hastings, 1 along University, and 1 down on the south along College Avenue. The green areas represent existing landscape and trees that we're going to preserve as part of this project. There's a large area of high-value trees in the center there between the buildings that we're maintaining. Then we're going to maintain the buffer along College Avenue and University Drive, as well as the existing parking island to the existing parking lot to the east. Again, College Township is in the upper right-hand corner, the northeast portion of the project. We are planning to maintain and accommodate the bike path that College Township is currently in the process of planning. This shows the bike path going through the site. I know there's other options for going around the site. We will make accommodations for whichever option is chosen. The project is anticipated to be constructed in 2 different phases. Phase 1 would be buildings 1 and 2 along Hastings. Construction to start in the spring of 2026, and those first 2 buildings occupied for the academic year 2028. Shortly following construction commencement of 2026, they'll start the second phase, probably about 8 or 9 months after the first phase, so that it can have fully occupied for academic year 2029. And you can see the split, a little bit more than half of the students will be occupying the buildings at that first phase. Here's an overview of the buildings and what they might look like from an aerial view, showing the landscape we're keeping within, the parking areas that are around the buildings, and then the buffer that we're going to have between university, college, and our development. A couple street views here along Hastings. This is looking from looking west on Hastings, and the next one is looking east on Hastings for the first 2 buildings that will be part of the phase 1. Here's an overall landscape plan. Again, the darker green areas on the left along the university and in the center are those historic and buffer trees we plan to maintain. And then the lighter green around the Hastings, in the north and the center are tree plantings we're going to have to supplement and enhance that experience. Transportation-wise, this is where the impact is most felt in College Township. We will maintain the 2 bus stations, bus stops, one on Hastings and one on University. We'll have pedestrian connections through Hastings and the intersection there at University Drive. Again, the parking is 1 per every 2 students, so it'll be 750 parking spaces. About 330 of those parking spaces will be on-site and within the borough. The other 450 or so parking spaces will be within College Township. That'll be a lease from Penn State to Gray Star for exclusive parking of those 450 spaces. The ADA parking will not be in those leased areas. The ADA accessible parking will be at each building. We'll have 4 spaces for each building. I think that is it. I know that was brief. Quick update of where we are. We do plan to come back here for formal approval, hopefully in the September-October timeframe. Right now, with anticipation of construction in 2026, we would anticipate that all those land development and the DEP permits would be submitted in that early fall timeframe.
Is that it?
Yeah. Any questions?
Oh, I'm sure. First of all, I want to thank you for providing such a detailed site plan, sketch plan.
You're welcome.
And just to remind everyone that they are familiar, but for anybody listening, this is our opportunity or watching for big picture comments or questions before you go back and do a fully engineered plan. So with that, I want to go to staff first. Was there anything that came out of Planning Commission meeting 2 days ago that we should be aware of or factor into our comments?
I don't think so, Matt. Do you? No.
The biggest thing that I recall hearing during the review was just acknowledgement that, stormwater off of this site could be potentially feeding into Thompson Run, and the downstream concerns that exist on 26 related to flooding. Obviously recognition that under DEP standards, they have to manage their flows at or below existing, but that was one concern that was raised during the discussion.
We have been coordinating with DEP, the Conservation District, Penn State, and PennDOT on stormwater management, so we're confident we can get it at or below the existing rates today.
Well, let's start with Rich then. Adam, did you have anything?
No, maybe as we go along.
Okay. Rich?
Sure. No, as Eric said, thank you for bringing forward, including the renderings. That was great. Especially appreciative of the bike path that we've been invested so much heart and soul into is incorporated into the plan. I think it'll benefit the residents there as much as College Townships. The stormwater is a good question. This seemed to me of a potential site that is going to get better because of improvement from a stormwater standpoint, but survey is yet to be seen. The only question I had was whether the infrastructure, there's a lot of infrastructure there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be phased, or will that be part of phase one, or?
The infrastructure will be completed during phase one.
Great.
There'll be, fill will be brought in to make this level, with the first two buildings being along Hastings. We'll have to have already the base for the stormwater, all the utilities, the parking already in place, so that
Good.
they're not trying to build all that around the students that are occupying the phase one.
Exactly. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, that's all I had, sir.
Susan?
No, the only thing you mentioned was the off-site parking would be in College Township, but that's the parking lot that's adjacent to that?
That's the
It's just
existing
located,
parking lot
okay.
that's adjacent.
Okay, and that's
It's
being
currently
leased,
long-term.
okay.
Yeah, they will dedicate 450 of those spaces
Okay.
for this development.
So not a different site, thank you.
Tracy?
I don't have anything, but thank you for a detailed presentation.
Dustin?
I guess mine's probably more for staff, if we know, how we're going to align yet, or have any kind of, just conceptual, is fine with the path to the campus in this plan.
Yeah, right now, currently, Keller has provided two potential alignments. One that is very similar to what Chris showed on his plan, where it ties directly in as kind of an internal, and thank you, Carla. Yeah, they're behind Chris are both. The other kind of works its way around. So where you see kind of their stormwater management ponds currently on here, there's an alignment that kind of skirts around the outside of the perimeter. Keller is working through those designs, but those are the initial concepts at this point.
Okay, so that would be on the south side of
Yep,
the stormwater.
exactly right.
And what about timeline-wise? Do you have any idea?
2026, Dawn?
For the
Bike path.
looks to go to bid January 26th
Yeah,
with construction in the summer.
okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking deconflicting, or aligning construction times, right? Could be great if it all ripped up at the same time, too. Yeah.
Should fit well with our
Awesome.
timeline for our site construction.
That's all I had.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah.
So my question really is, if ultimately the alignment is through essentially the site that we're talking about here this evening, is our construction timing, which is next year, going to conflict given the fact that there's going to be construction occurring on that south side of the bike path at that point, later on during the overall project?
Yeah, so we plan on starting in March, April 2026, just a little bit after, probably the same time. If you bid it in January, you'll probably be starting at the same time. We may have to have some temporary precautions, some safety, while the top half is open, there may have to be a temporary bike route while they're building those final two buildings on the south side.
Okay. Well, then just following up on that, it seems if our construction, if we go with the southern route, it seems like it would just be easiest for you guys to build the bike path when you're doing the first phase. And if we go with the upper one, then I think it becomes a little more challenging because we will have put it in, and then you'll be coming through possibly with adjustments to your design. So it almost seems like, I know there's issues associated, great issues associated with the southern route.
Actually, the northern
Yeah.
route has the worst in terms of grades and
Oh.
type fill. Yeah.
Okay. So this might line up to both of our benefits, the timeline. A couple other questions. I think I read in here the traffic impact study is done and we have a copy of it?
The consultant does, yes.
Consultant. So we don't know if there's anything in there that,
I think they're still working through the TIS.
Working through the final TIS.
Yes,
correct?
it's not officially approved at this point.
okay, all right. And then you mentioned UPD District 5. This parking requirements are the same in the borough and college, well, they ought to be, right? I mean, if both have agreed on UPA 5.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that we have the parking that is overlapped in both, but the parking requirements are the same. As you pointed out, they should be because they're both in the same UPD District 5.
That's one of the reasons we went through and did the UPD, just one of them. And then lastly, the bus stop on University Drive. It's going to, as this project, as it fills up with tenants, it needs to be expanded or improved. You're working with CATA, or you've got plan to have some conversation with them?
We'll have some conversations with them there. There's one on University and there's another one on Hastings right now as well.
Yeah, it appears though that the one on Hastings, or the one on University, is going to be a little bit closer to most of the people.
It'll be in the direct path, yeah.
And it's two different routes.
Correct.
Served by two different campus routes. But I just want to make sure that they're integrated into this process, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they come back and recommend that stop on University Drive be expanded, at a minimum, some shelter put in as part of this. That's common practice in the region, as you see, as student housing comes online, they build pull-offs and shelters. It's no different than providing the automobile parking accommodations for their tenants. But that's all I had. Did staff have any follow-up?
Yeah, I had another question. Should the route of the bike path be through the project? It's our intention to construct a 10-foot wide bike path. Does that in any way conflict with what you're anticipating here?
No, that's what we anticipated, based on the staff has been very helpful, and they're meeting with us once a month to give us input and feedback, and I think that came out at the last meeting that you wanted a 10-foot bike path, so that's what we tentatively have.
Very good.
Through there, it's a 10-foot path.
Great. That's all I have.
Then just a procedural question, since you're in both townships, both municipalities have to approve the same land development plan.
We presented
Pieces about this big.
I see that.
a little bit, but we're there. So we presented 2 weeks ago at State College Borough. We're here this week in College Township. We anticipate coming a submittal, I think, September, October, and be back in front of you requesting the approval at that time.
Okay, we went through this with the law school. It's not but then lastly, since you mentioned it, did anything come out of the borough presentation that we should be aware of?
We did not have any comments during the presentation. We have not received any written technical comments from them yet.
All right. Sorry. My AI Gemini picked something up. All right. All right. If there's nothing else, then Chris, thank you. Again, we always appreciate the opportunity to see these things ahead of time.
I appreciate you letting me present this, and I appreciate the staff working with it, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
That concludes plans. That takes us to reports. We have a manager's report in our packet. Does the manager have anything to add?
Actually, I do have one item to add. And it is related to, I'm sorry, it's related to the solar power purchasing agreement. This was a communication we just received this afternoon. So allow me, if you'll bear with me, it's relatively short, but I wanted to read it to you. Pam Adams, the Director of Planning for Center Region, has written that everyone has signed the contracts. All contracts were submitted as signed by the members on June 16th, and Green Sky, which is the consultant, sent them to the retailer and the solar developer by the 20th. Prospect 14, which is the developer, responded that the owner was on vacation and would sign after the 4th of July. The last we heard on July 8th is that they are determining the impact of the OBBB Act that became law on July 4th, and they asked for some patience. our understanding, that would be the solar power purchasing working group. Our understanding from those in the solar industry is that the financials can still work for this type of project, since it is likely shovel-ready, but it is this is just a high level of understanding. So the purpose of relaying that information to you is that I'm sure that a number of you are receiving some inquiries about the status of solar power purchasing. I think it suffices to say we have done our part at this point, and the ultimate say-so and the ultimate signatures that are required to make this a go fall now with Prospect 14. So while Pam doesn't have a good sense of when we may actually receive signed documents back, that is still in process, and apparently it is still under review by the developer. So stay tuned. But other than that, Mr. Chair, I really don't have any additional items that I would like to share or comment on.
All right, questions for the manager on that or anything else in the manager's report? Dustin?
Nothing in the report. I just wondered if we could get a quick update on the Elmwood construction on the bridge there.
As far as I know, mid-September is the completion date for the bridge.
Originally, it was early September.
No, it was always mid-September.
It was always mid-September.
I actually, as soon as I heard that question coming up, I got online and found that there hasn't been any change to that.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right.
Well, it'll remain completely closed till then, or they'll have it
Yes.
partially open? Okay. Thanks.
That then takes us to, excuse me, COG Regional County and Liaison Reports. I did not do what I usually do, and that is mark who had what COG committee meeting. So we'll just go across the table. Tracy, have you met?
Yes, we met right before the 4th of July HR. We didn't have a lot that we discussed, but one major thing that we discussed is understanding that we get privileged information and how to govern ourselves accordingly, and like how we can in our executive sessions, and making sure how COG can encourage us to follow those guidelines, but not necessarily have a contract or something signed. Some of us feel like there should be something to sign to state that you're going to act a certain way with the privileged information that you receive. And so we kind of just left it to staff to kind of have further discussion in the future. But that was the biggest part of our conversation, is what we do with the privileged information as representatives of our different municipalities and borough, and how we should keep that information to ourselves and not disperse that information before it needs to be to the public. So that was the biggest conversation that we had.
All right. Questions for Tracy? All right, thank you. Dustin, any of your committees?
Yeah, so Climate Action Sustainability Committee met on Monday. The biggest thing I just want to bring to your attention was the item where we talked about updating the environmental purchasing policy. It was a work item for us. So if you don't know, so COG's purchasing procurement policy, which was adopted in 2024, includes a statement to reference the environmental sustainable purchases, to have environmental sustainable purchases, and reference a sort of an addendum, if you will, that kind of does this. But we need to do the work. So it's a phased approach is proposed, with groundwork beginning in 2025, and then an updated policy targeted for 2026. And why I'm sharing this particularly, so the committee was of the thought, I think almost unanimously, that it would be really great to really, instead of making an addendum or an attachment to this, to really fold it into the environmental purchasing and procurement policy, or the procurement policy all as one, so that we can really get those environmental objectives within that. That's it.
Questions for Dustin? All right. Any other committees? Any of those other ones?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have others, if you want to wait till then, or I can.
No, you mean non-COG committees?
Yeah,
All right, we'll come back to them then. Susan?
Nope, public safety was canceled this month.
Rich?
Facilities met on July 1st. The big topics were the Hess softball complex master plan. That's the all ages layout, which is the 3 large fields versus 4 smaller fields. Various discussions back and forth, key points being safety of play, to move forward with anything with the restrooms, we need to have a lockdown master plan and everything. The same discussions we've had. You can make a big field little, but you can't make a little field big, and all that kind of stuff. So we supported and recommended pushing it forward to the Finance Committee, the Executive Committee, and the General Forum. There was one dissent vote, but that was just trying to slow down budget growth, I guess, but that's not what the master plan does. If anything, it helps the budget process by being able to go get pursue grants and everything like that. We had a very good discussion on COG maintenance and asset management agreement with the fire stations as a basis, just referencing how all the different facilities are treated differently, and there is no standard agreement. And so our goal with the facility manager is to get a COG agreement that says these things are covered and how they're covered. And it needs to be fair to both parties, because some of the municipalities put a lot of money into setting up facilities and don't charge anything. Others charge stuff, to reimbursables, it goes the whole way. But with the discussion of and knowledge that as the region grows, we're going to have more facilities, it would be better to get something in place now that it's ready for when those new facilities come online. Next, we talked about energy usage reporting for COG-owned and managed buildings. Staff is generating more and more reports that take a look and standardize how we look at least electric and natural gas usage right now. They're starting to assemble that so that we can review and see, in particular, where we make an improvement or a modification, how that impacts those, and so that we have a baseline to look at those. And also with the solar power purchasing, that'll be interesting to review through that. We had our capital projects update of the various things going on. There's always something going on. The keys are HVAC and roof replacement at the Patton Fire Station, COG building parking lot, and new front doors at Schlow Library. Pending any questions?
Questions for Rich? I have a quick one then.
Sure.
The desire to see a decision made on the Hessfield master plan before investing in the restrooms, is that what I heard you say? The last time we talked about restrooms, they were the kind that could be moved, right?
That's one of the things that's on the table for sure, but the location of whatever it is,
So there'll still have to be some kind of permanent something put in, even if the restroom could, okay.
Right, in the master plan that you'll probably see at the General Forum, it's actually a 2-story structure. It's listed as a 2-story structure.
Okay. And I agree, I think it makes all the sense in the world to have a decision made on the master plan before you invest. I just was worried that this was going to be another thing to hold up the...
Well, not really, because...
the bathroom.
Yeah, well, interestingly, the host municipality is not a big fan or supporter of the expanded restrooms or whatever. They want to get to the full sewer in and all that kind of stuff.
Not a fan of that choice of the restroom.
Right.
As opposed to full. Okay.
Getting the full and everything, but there's a lot that needs to go in before that, and they're also the ones that tell us that this keeps getting kicked down the road, and what needs to be done will kick it down the road further.
Well, and doing this option doesn't preclude doing that in the future.
Correct, and that was actually what the facilities committee put out, is that the upgraded portable bathrooms would be an interim solution, not the long-term solution that allowed us to, to continue moving towards the long term, but not do nothing.
That's good. I feel better having heard
Yeah.
that. All right, questions? No questions for Rich on facilities? Did finance meet?
Yes,
They always meet. Wasn't that something? No.
yes, Kimberly's on there, get more quality time with Kimberly. The big things that we talked about was the Hess softball complex. I was honestly surprised by how much we talked about the Hess complex at finance. The discussion moved beyond finance, but we got a little different perspective on this, that, and the other thing. But we did recommend and move forward the recommendation to the all ages to executive committee and general forum. Then we moved into fund balance policy. We actually had a little break from fund balance policy discussion because of actual other business of COG interrupting our discussions on that, but we got in full force and talked about a lot of things. We reapproved several of the things that we've already discussed, and then we got into new stuff, which this meeting was on fire operating, fire capital, emergency management contingency. So there was a lot of good discussions. We went a little bit longer than intended, but we moved forward, and we'll see those tweaks come back at our next meeting, and just keep taking a bite every opportunity we can, and we'll get it out of there at some point, have something to present. A couple things on that to bring to council's attention, a couple things that's being pushed into decision making is whether to have the unemployment fund is a separate fund right now. Yeah, is a separate fund right now. Insurance reserve is a separate fund right now. Whether those will be incorporated back directly into agencies as a line item. Staff's developed good models that they can push out good information to each agency, not that it doesn't have to be a separate standalone and everything. So just so you're not surprised when that comes forward as a potential and everything. It's still going to be a big number moving from zero days of reserve to we're standardizing a bit on 30 days. Just as an FYI, there are some that are pushing that the Government Finance Office Officers Association standard is 60 days. We've pushed back on that because COG's got excellent payers and everything. So we're honing around 30 days, but that's still going to be a big number from where we are now. So we're waiting to the end to get everything policed up to see what that real number is, and then similar to the compensation study, we'll provide an implementation plan along with any recommendations. Ben or Kimberly, did I forget anything?
No, I think that that hits most of it. One of the things that we're kind of working through is the combination on the fund balance issue of that. For the 2025 budget, a lot of fund balance was used across the board. And now we're looking at making that up in the actual budget this year and moving into having a fund balance. We're being as frugal as we can to preserve as much of that fund balance as possible for year end. There will definitely be some challenges, and an implementation plan will be necessary to phase that in. I don't want 30 to 60 days to terrify anybody. Typically when you're doing these things, you're not looking at immediately funding a 30 to 60 day. You'll set a policy that you replenish reserves over a 3 to 4 year period, for example, rather than put that all in at once. But yeah, that is a very long discussion to continue.
Comments, questions? Come on now. That's a real heavy lift. I I for one appreciate the effort that goes in to beginning to weave some of these business best practices such into the COG process.
The only thing that I would say is I would encourage members of council, if you have independent thoughts on this, I'm sure that our representative of the finance committee would be happy to at least hear those. I know that I have shared a few things with Rich relative to just some rather random thoughts about fund balance policy, but I'm sure that he was gracious enough to, acknowledge the email that I sent. I'm sure he would do the same with you as well. So if there's some off camera, off meeting comments that come to mind, I'm sure, I hope I'm correct.
Absolutely, and just a general understanding of why and method of the madness, because again, we've had a lot of good discussions, a lot of conscientious thinking, and everything. So I'm excited about what's going to come out of it, I think.
Just having a fund balance policy is a move in the right direction.
I don't know who said that ever.
I mean, this is something this township has been pushing for quite some time, so we're getting there.
We are.
All right, those are two pretty heavy lifts, as I noted. Did you have time for any other council or any other COG?
I may have, but I don't recall.
Okay. All right.
They invite me to stuff.
Then circling back to Dustin, if we're done with COG committee reports, what else do we have?
Yeah, I just wanted to give an update on Susquehanna Centennial Committee. We did meet on Tuesday, and just a shout out for things we talked about, obviously, Spikes Night, the 9th of August. So please tell a friend. And one thing on that, the committee did ask that there be a 150th table, and that perhaps maybe some of the electeds would like to man that. So any volunteers who want to spend a couple minutes or so, or hours at the table as
Sure.
well.
Who should we coordinate that with? Or should
Probably
we?
through staff.
Yeah, with staff at
Yeah.
this
Okay.
point, and we can make the necessary arrangements.
Yep.
In the past, most of those tables have shut down around the 7th inning, we're assuming.
Well, actually, I think that the length of time has actually been greatly reduced. They're now trying to identify around 7:30 for closing up the tables. People are welcome to stay as long as they like, in terms of manning the tables, but in terms of actually having personnel at a table, it's 7:30. Gates will open at, 5:20 for the season ticket holders and 5:30 for general admission folks. So from 5:30, 6:30, an hour and a half to 2 hours
All right.
is kind of what the expectation is, I believe.
5:30? 5:30?
So we'd be looking for volunteers in 30-minute blocks or something like that.
Yeah, and again, I mean, if all members of council are going to be attending, you can circulate in and out, kind of a thing, and there'll be other members of staff that'll be available, I'm sure, as well. So, and we'll have a variety of pieces of information that we typically have at those types of things, and I believe that everybody is knowledgeable enough to speak to anything that may come up. But it's to represent, it's to show the flag a little bit, and I think it's a great opportunity for people.
I had a question on that. So if an organization wants to have a table, should they contact the township, or should they contact the Spikes?
You should contact the township.
Okay.
Yeah, primarily what we've done is we've made a much bigger push, more concerted effort this year to contact the various nonprofits that are either based or located in College Township or operate in College Township. And Katie, help me out. Do you recall how many we have at this point?
9 to 10.
9 to 10. So
Committed
that's
to the game.
right, tables. So we
Nice.
have 9 to 10 organizations that have indicated an interest, a willingness to participate. So we're pretty pleased with that. We've not had that level of participation in the past. So, and there's still couple more weeks yet to go. So who knows? But I think it's going to work out very well.
Do we have time and budget for maybe some little bit of swag at our 150th table? That's, people usually give stuff out like that.
Well, we have stickers, we have buttons.
All right.
At this point. That would be roughly the extent of the swag that we have in-house at this moment. I will gladly connect you and Katie together as the swag committee or subcommittee. And you guys can work out anything else. But as far as the budget goes, yes, as you know, council had, we had inserted $25,000 into the budget for this year for the overall year and the various events that we were going to hold. And we're well under, and we will complete the entirety of the year well under. So there should be ample opportunity if somebody wanted to do something different. Or in addition, not different.
Commemorative Spike's jersey, there you go.
Well,
That might bring the budget.
Now keep in mind a couple of things. At each table, part of the package, part of the events are going to be 150 hot dogs that are giveaways, 150 ice cream. I don't know if it's bowls or cones, but ice cream. And the idea there is at least a substantial number of those we're going to have tickets, and those tickets are going to be divided amongst the tables that we have. So it will encourage people to kind of circulate. The tables are going to be set up, and I think it's in two distinct horseshoe kinds of shapes. So it's going to encourage people to kind of go through the gauntlet, if you will, so that everybody has some exposure that's going to be there in terms of working those tables and those organizations. But in addition to that, there's 150 T-shirts that are going to be distributed throughout the game. And in addition to that, there's a number of additional T-shirts that are going to be made available for the in the suite as well. So I think that I think the T-shirts are covered. We did review a mock-up or a proof, if you will, of the T-shirts. You know, we're utilizing the sorry, we've got a lot of ums in here tonight, but we're utilizing the logo that was developed by the high school student, and it'll have that on the front, spikes in the back. So I think I think for the type of T-shirts that are giveaways that you typically see at the Spikes, I think it's in keeping with that. It's not elaborate, but I think it's going to be very nice.
And posters.
Oh yes, and we have 1,000 posters of various township facilities, buildings, landmarks that are going to be distributed as well.
Also, if you guys saw the timeline that was published in Town and Gown, right? There'll be
nicely
trivia
done.
questions, and some of those might be, timeline things, to study your timeline. We've actually talked about too, maybe something to post the timeline so that people can read it at the game as well. We talked a little bit about that last night. But other than that, the Soup and Song, 19 September, just put a plug in for that. We've talked about various events coming up.
Nice. Any other non-COG committee reports?
IDA was canceled.
And I did send out my MPO report, some attachments, and the part I would have spoke to in the meeting, I sent a separate email, had to do with the return we're getting on our investment in staff for securing competitive grant opportunities. Then that would then take us to county and liaison. That would take us to staff, PC, and other committee reports. I know PC met on Tuesday. Matt? Did you have anything on the agenda besides the Penn State, besides the apartments?
We did.
Okay.
Last month on June 19th, I sat down on my computer, Thursday, June 19th, and I was going to review the council's agenda and my report. And I noticed in my email that the meeting of the council on June 18th was available to view online, so I have to apologize for that. The good news is I didn't make Tuesday night's meeting. We heard a presentation from Pam Adams, the Center Region Planning Agency, concerning their comprehensive plan. She went over the values, the visions, and then we spent some time on an interactive map that she has. That worked very well. We also recommended for approval the Half Moon Towing plan. It is a 3,000 square foot garage that they want to put up off of Caroline Drive on Reese Road. They're going to store, I think, 6 trucks there. When they came before, probably the only concern we had is it's a pretty narrow road. It's limited by topography. So they came back with 2 sort of pullover areas. And like I said, we did recommend that for approval. Does anybody have any questions on any of that?
Anything to add on the site plan, sketch plan that we saw tonight and you saw on Tuesday?
No. I mean, very little of it is in College Township, so.
Yeah. But the bike path was a big...
Yeah. Well, we really didn't discuss that much. We sort of missed that.
Oh, okay. Well, it wasn't the same without you on that Wednesday.
Well, I did, in honor of 4th of July, I did have a couple jokes, and when George Washington crossed the Delaware on that historic night, what did he say? And he said, "Men, get in the boat." And a 2nd grade class, they were discussing the Declaration of Independence, and the teacher said, "Well, does anybody, know where the Declaration of Independence was signed?" And little Adam raised his hand, and he said, I know where it was signed." And he said, "Okay, Adam, tell everybody in the class where it was signed." And Adam said, "Well, everybody signed it at the bottom."
All right. Janet, you're going to have to follow that.
I guess I can't because
Thanks, Matt.
Parks and Rec did not meet in July. Our next meeting is August 11th, and that's all I have to report.
All right. We love these summer schedules for these meetings. I think that concludes meetings. Did I miss any? Can we move on to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging?
Yep. Quick report for you this evening. Some of the month-wide celebrations, acknowledgements: French American Heritage Month, National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, Disability Pride Month. A couple days of note here. We just passed on July 14th, International Non-Binary Peoples Day. And July 26th, and this ties back to something that's in your consent agenda, marks the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act being signed into law. So you'll notice in your consent agenda a proclamation acknowledging that from College Township. That's what I have for tonight.
Okay, this agenda also allows an opportunity for anyone in the room, any of the public, to address council on said issues. I'm looking online and not seeing anybody raise their hand. I don't see anybody in the room. So thank you, Mike. That will conclude that and move us into the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda has items in all 3 of the normal categories. The first, CA1, is 2 sets of minutes. CA1A is the minutes from our June 18th, 2025 College Township Council meeting, and our CA1B is the minutes from our June 25th, 2025 special College Township Council meeting. CA2 includes 7 pieces of correspondence, the first of which is CA2A, an email from Lamont Village Association dated June 16th, 2025, regarding CATA bus service during Elmwood Street closure. CA2B is a letter from A Soldier's Hand regarding the Walk to Remember donation. CA2C is a letter from the CBICC requesting a 2025 contribution towards economic development. CA2D is an email from Dan Materna dated July 7th, 2025 regarding casino. CA2E is a letter from Pantera Engineering dated July 3rd, 2025, regarding time extension for the Home 2 Suites at Shiloh Road Land Development Plan to October 25th, 2025. CA2F is a letter from Neil Sullivan, PSU Planner, dated July 3rd, 2025, regarding signage at Beaver Stadium. And lastly, CA2G is a letter from Dewberry Engineers dated July 11th, 2025, regarding time extension for the Walmart number 2230 Land Development Plan to October 28th, 2025. And the last section is 2 action items, CA23. CA3A is Resolution R-25-16, Center County Hazard Mitigation Plan Update. CA3B is Proclamation P-25-04, recognizing the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. Would anyone like any of those items pulled for discussion before I accept the motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
CA2A.
CA2A, I would like to pull CA2F also. Okay. Anybody else? All right, then at this point, the chair will entertain a Tracy, did you have anything you want to pull? Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to accept and approve the consent agenda as presented, minus CA2A and CA2F.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Comments, questions? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Let's take CA2A first. Is that the one you want to pull?
Yeah. So yeah, CA2A is the letter about mainly about buses through Lamont, due to closure. I think several of the stops have been closed due to closure of Elmwood Street. I just wanted to go over and fully understand if we know if all stops through Lamont in that route are stopped, and if there's anything. It does seem like people are having problems getting around that normally depend on the bus service. Do we know anything, or if we can just check into it?
Well, no, I mean, the reason that the route is not running its normal daily schedule has to do entirely with the closure of Elmwood Street Bridge. And because of the routing or the directions of the travel of the CATA buses, there's not a good way to provide service other than the current configuration. So that, and utilizing Elmwood Street is really the key element there. So as long as that is down or closed off, there's limited ability, I believe, for the regular routing. Now, that said, I just attended a meeting today with CATA staff and the municipal managers. There is going to be an expansion of the CATA Go program, and it already exists in certain sections of College Township. In essence, the expansion is in fact going to, in essence, cover all of College Township here in the next number of weeks. And as a result of that, I do believe that residents do now have more ability to tap into the CATA Go system as opposed to the fixed route transit that has been impacted by the closure of the Elm Street Bridge. So that's good news. It's a little bit on the come. It's not quite here yet, but I do believe that folks are not entirely closed off to the prospects of public transportation.
Okay.
Since Dustin pulled that, there's 2 things I just want to remind everybody of, because this is going to come back for discussion at some point. One, just an awareness that Lamont has just been pummeled. The service, the First Hour project closed off service in Lamont for a long period of time, and now this one. And if you will recall, CATA had proposed pulling out of Lamont completely and asking all those people to walk out to College Avenue based on ridership. Well, yeah, duh. But my point is, just be aware of this the next time it comes up, and be prepared to remind them that, yeah, ridership in Lamont is going to be down. When the bus doesn't go through Lamont at all for 4, you can't use that data to make decisions. You know, that's, and my second point, which ties into what Adam said, yeah, there's Catago there now, and that's nice, but Catago takes you to Hills Plaza, where you have to stand and wait for a transfer. Those, many if not most of the residents are heading to campus or downtown. So the bus is a far more attractive and convenient option for folks than Catago. The Catago is a nice safety net in this particular case, but you may have heard me mentioning that when they were here with the service plan, that if we're going to expand Catago, we've got to figure out a way to bring those people to where they really want to go, which isn't necessarily Hills Plaza. And that would then, that's a big difference between the Catago safety net that's there now and the bus.
And if you're talking Elmwood Street doesn't open back up till mid-September, now we're gonna hit, fall semester with those students living in Lamont.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have a spoiler alert here as well. When is our presentation scheduled?
Second meeting of August.
In the second meeting of August, you're going to have PennDOT representatives here who are going to discuss with council the closure of College Avenue, Pike Street, and Hauserville Road next year for the replacement of the bridge over Spring Creek.
So the Lamont service is going to take another hit next year.
It's going to be, it's going to be exactly as it is this year.
Well, and so, I guess that's the question, and really that was Sue's question. Why can't you change the route if that's, if we know it's coming, right? Why can't CATA change the route and get it somehow, get service through there?
Well, I can speak to that, having had some experience with that. Just going out Branch Road and in South Atherton, that can't be a detour on the route. That's a whole nother route. So yes, it could be done, but it can't be done in the format of a summer detour of an existing route because the timing just doesn't work. It's a ton more miles in time. But you're right. There could be something done. And if Catago by August is feeding people into campus instead of Hills Plaza, then I think it becomes a little bit more tolerable. But if it continues to run people to Hills and ask them to get off and wait and make a transfer, then I think it's a bigger issue. And then I think we need to talk about what Dustin suggested. My thoughts. Anything else on CA2A?
Spoiler.
Let's move then to CA2F. Adam, this is kind of what we had asked when Susan and I and staff met with them last month.
Yeah, last month, staff and both Sue and Eric, as the chair and vice chair, had the opportunity to sit down with Penn State and individuals from the planning office or planning department on campus, as well as athletics. And we had a conversation involving signage on a newly renovated Beaver Stadium. And we had talked about what the constraints were based on our ordinance at this particular point in time. They had expressed some very real interest in perhaps having a few more options available to them relative to either the size of signs or the number of signs. And one of the things that we came away from that meeting with is that if Penn State was serious about pursuing those options, we'd like to have Penn State reduce that in writing and get it before council so that it could be something we could discuss and that could be considered to be ultimately remanded to the Planning Commission for review. We had talked about a variety of things. Some of the initial interest in expansion of signage prior to the full completion of the stadium renovation, I think is capable of working. But I think that they're looking a little bit further beyond that to when the full build out, the full completion of the renovation project is done, and are interested in what what kind of, I'll say relief, that they might be able to have relative to some of their needs in, be it naming rights and other types of things, in terms of signage on the facility. So, the request is here tonight. Penn State did follow up. My recommendation to council is to talk a little bit about this, and if there is any appetite at all, ultimately, the only thing that I would recommend that council do this evening is ask staff to go back and put together a potential remand letter for planning commission's consideration. But I think that it's apropos to have some conversation about the request.
Yeah, Mark and Sue, you were both at the meeting. Anything else to offer?
No, other than I believe it would make perfect sense, not only for the stadium, but some of our other larger venues, to afford them the opportunity for, create a separate category for them. And I've actually found some interesting ordinances scattered around the country that address specifically that.
Yeah, at the meeting, we all agreed that our sign ordinance works great for what we had around 30 or 40 years ago, stores, retail, but no one really envisioned trying to apply those ratios to some superstructure like that had signage inside, outside. It really almost needs to have its own set of criteria. I mean, it's kind of where and so we asked them to make a formal request. Mark tossed around some good ideas at the meeting, but in order for us to formally start working on changes, we needed a request. So that's what we're asking for tonight. In this particular case, either consensus or a motion.
Consensus at this point is sufficient.
So if everyone's nodding their head, we'll see a remand letter the next meeting.
Next meeting or two.
With the idea that we start to look at what's reasonable to apply signage-wise to something like a Beaver Stadium.
The only thing that, if there are any ideas at the moment that people have, if we were to relax our existing sign ordinance standards, if anybody had ideas in terms of a maximum or size of a facility that ought to be in a different category, that could be helpful, and would just be some detail information we could feather into a remand letter.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I would be interested in really putting it out the way it's been presented by Neil, without sort of a pre-conversation around options. I'd rather see all of this go to Planning Commission as part of the process and then get recommendations, because there were many different things that came up about the various types of signs and the dynamic signs and the static signs. So there's some I think, bigger safety issues, some other things that I would feel more comfortable if we sort of took a clean look at it rather than coming into it with some presuppositions.
That's great.
Yeah, and also what came up at the meeting was what defines a sign.
Right. Right. And what defines a sign? What could potentially be considered a billboard? That was a concern. So what would that open up? So there were a lot of decisions that seemed reasonable. I wouldn't say they were unreasonable, but there were downstream impacts for other areas, other buildings, and how would that look? So I think it needs
It's not a matter of just taking the number and multiplying it and giving them more square footage.
Right.
It was complicated. So what Susan is suggesting is we just kind of give them a blank slate to work with.
We'll put a few bollards around it, but yeah, it'll be pretty much a blank slate.
Yeah, I mean, I support it, but one thing I would also point out to consider as part of it is, especially if you're looking at digital signage, is when is it allowed to be on, right? Because I'm personally, I hate to see signs left on, scrolling something that doesn't really even matter, they just leave it on. I think it's an eyesore.
Well, and there
Digital
were,
signage came up in the meeting.
yeah, no, and also safety, when the signs are on, they create a distraction for drivers. How big are the signs? How distracting will
Yeah.
that range be? How will that affect the view sheds? So there were a lot of good questions that were asked that day, but I think
It's
those
a good meeting.
fair, yeah.
As usual, the meeting was set up because the first home game is in,
88 days from the day of the meeting, 88.
and there was some thought of introducing some of these sign elements then, and I think we've kind of moved past that now. We're looking long-term.
Correct.
All right, then, if there is consensus, then I think what we got was consensus, so all we really need is a motion to accept CA2A and CA2F from consent agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, anyone opposed? The remaining consent agendas accepted and adopted. That concludes consent agenda and takes us to old business, which we have none, but we do have two items under new business. NB1 is our 2026 COG Strategic Guide to Services and Investments, or the SGSD. Discussion with potential action, but before we consider action, I think we ought to hear what we should hear from Adam, who actually provided us with a really good start. Well, I should say, Ben actually provided the township with a really good starting point, jumping off point. And then Adam took the next step, which really makes, I think, helps us with our discussion tonight. Would you agree? You gave us a starting point.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Just as a reminder, typically, the way the College Township has historically done these reviews, either of the COG CIP or the COG budget, is that the manager provides some thoughts or some comments. And then it goes to council, and you folks have the opportunity to debate that. Ultimately, you're making the decisions about, what should stay in, or the comments that should be made back to the COG staff. So, but that is typically how we have done this over any number of years now. And so this year is no different, but for the fact that for the first time ever, one of the things that we received as part of the SGSI was an actual COG ranking of the priorities as seen by the executive director and his staff. And that immensely facilitated my work in terms of providing you with these starting comments or these starting thoughts. And I just want to take just a moment and maybe read a little bit from the introductory memo. And we've already covered the first time ever about the rank order that has been provided here. So essentially, each agency went through, and for the projects that pertain to that agency, they provided a ranking. Then the executive director and his team went through and they provided an overall COG order of importance, if you will, to the items that are in the CIP. The target that I used, and again, completely subjective, but I tried to keep at or below $1 million in terms of these projects that I'm suggesting that we fund. And of the list of a total of roughly 4950 projects that were identified within the CIP, I found that we were able to get through about 16 actual projects before we exceeded that $1 million threshold. Now, one of the other things that was done in the rankings here, and I also provided an actual rank order list for you that was part of the packet. And I also provided a supplement this evening, but the rank order that was in the packet identifies a number of projects that you'll see highlighted in blue. Those blue projects are all from the enterprise fund, which is the code agency fund. Those are not dollars that are coming from individual municipalities. Those are all fee-based. And so what I did in my 16 projects is I excluded those enterprise fund projects right off the top. They are, in essence, almost a separate type of, for separate consideration. The last thing that I wanted to note is there were a number of items that were identified as having no impact. And in the rank order that was in the packet, I believe that each and every one of those are valid. Those are essentially no-cost items, and I think that those are things that should be pursued as part of the 2026 plan. So you have in the packet materials that you received. The supplement that I gave you this evening was simply a bit of an enhancement of the exact same information with the addition of the adopted COG priorities being listed to the right of this list of 48 items. And you will recall, and I was trying to remember exactly how long ago this was, but it was a year and a half, possibly 2 years ago. We spent an awful lot of time in committees and at the general forum, and actually, and in here, I know that we spent a good deal of time talking about what our priorities at COG should be. And there really essentially are 4 as a result of all that action, and these were actually formally approved by the COG General Forum. And the first was support the safety of those who live, work, and visit in the center region, which for shorthand purposes I classified as safety. The second was take care of what we own, which I classified as maintenance. Then take care of COG staff, which I identified as COG staff. And lastly, prepare for the future of the COG and COG facilities, which are identified as future. So all that the supplement does is provide you with those related COG priorities. Granted, as I've defined them, there could be some quibbles in terms of whether it's maintenance or it's something else, and I accept that, but these were my take on where these things fall. So in addition to that, there is always a comment sheet that we complete. And the comments that ultimately are approved by council, and these have to be consensus comments, where we don't take 5 sets of different comments on each one of these particular items. So we do provide consensus comments. And we've been pretty consistent and have done, I think, a very good job as a council over the years in providing that singular feedback from council as a whole back to the COG executive director and to the finance committee and the executive committee. So I have provided comments on virtually all. I realize I missed comment on one, and it's the very first one that you'll see in the comment guide. But be that as it may.
Well, we can have no comment, right?
And you could have, and you can have no comment. However, that is not my style, so I commented on virtually all of them. So, but in any event, these are, again, intended as a starting point for council's conversation and discussion. I believe that with the work that Ben and his team have done and the description or the representation of what Ben and his team have done that I've been able to provide here in terms of the materials, along with the comments that are in the comment guide, I think give council a really good start at forming those consensus opinions. So that's really the spiel. But if there's questions about the materials that were presented, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Okay, let's do this. That is a starting point, and absent any comment, it will be our ending point. No, seriously, that's what we're kind of working from that tonight. And I do want to say to Ben, since he's here, college has always provided only consensus comments. And I think it's well within your right as executive director, particularly as your first shot through this, to require all municipalities provide only consensus comments and not a wish list. And I'm going to ask you, while you're up there, to do a second thing before we get into it. Adam mentioned the COG priorities. So if you have any thoughts about reconciling any of these against those, and if that would change them at all, we'd be happy to hear that. And secondly, you'll notice in some of our comments, our starting point wonders why some of these things were lower priorities from the directors. So if you could shed any light on that,
Certainly.
that might nip some of our comments and questions and keep us moving more efficiently towards consensus here tonight.
Thank you very much. So one of the other new items that was introduced this year, along with CGTV, which is the term we're trying to use here, was the municipal comment operating guidelines, which the Finance Committee had requested. And comment intent is the section that I tried to draw everybody's attention to, which went out to every elected official. Municipal comments are intended to reflect a unified position or shared perspective of the governing body on CGTV proposals. So that has been communicated across the board. That has been taken seriously by the municipalities.
And I saw that, but I'm just encouraging you to remind them or require that, you know.
This is the last of the meetings. This has been stated outright.
Okay.
I have specifically read this section to every single elected body over the last 2 weeks.
To no avail.
No, this has been very positive. While there has been some very robust discussions in some communities, the comments that have come back have been much more concise for that. And so I really appreciate the efforts that people have been putting into reducing wide discussion to those unified comments. The other thing that I'd like to hit on for everybody here is that this is not formal approval. You're providing comments,
right.
Positive, negative. Just because you support something today does not mean it is moving its way into the budget. If we see unanimous approval across the board from all 6 communities, then it'll likely be baked into the budget. Everything else is moving into that menu, and I expect that just about everything is going to find its way into the menu. It's rare that we find unanimous support for something. I did want to just comment on the ranking. So where you see COG ranking, that is the Ben ranking for these items. Each agency did their individual ranking. They submitted those to me. I then spent a very long time with 50-some proposals spread out over my floor at home and reorganized them over and over again until I came up with a ranking that I was satisfied with. I expressed to Adam just the other day that I probably could have done it 5 different ways. Eventually you have to make some choices, and so you have in that COG ranking my opinion on how they should be. It does at times vary from the agency rankings on their priorities, and that is just my perspective from the COG-wide system to an agency perspective. In some cases it was a matter of, for instance with the planning agency, their top priority was the AmeriCorps position, which I fully support, except for the fact that AmeriCorps is not likely to be funded, and therefore I was not going to prioritize that above other things that I thought were much more realistic for us to achieve, such as the intern position, which we've seen great success with this year. So there are a few of those kinds of discrepancies. Otherwise, it really is a matter of me pushing for one thing that I think has a greater overall impact on us at the moment than what that particular agency director and their staff did feel. Adam did a great job at covering most of everything that is in the speech that I have given 5 times already. One of the other items that I do like to mention, when it comes to code specifically and the number of requests that you see there, we're trying to educate people a lot more on this now, in that when you see the number of vehicles that are being proposed, these are going through 4 to 6 lives for us. They go through code, which is often construction sites. After code has hit their replacement cycle for those, they're cleaned up, fixed up, and offered to other COG agencies. The SCLO-mobile, the one that delivers and picks up books around the area, is a code vehicle. We have a pickup truck in the parks. There have been other vehicles in each of those code agencies. We also, when COG agencies can't use them, we offer them to our municipalities. If they can't use them, or once they have gone through that next stage, they get offered to the school district, and the automotive program works on those for several years. And the students have a great opportunity to build and rebuild those over and over again. From there, it gets sent out to the fire school, and the fire school will do safety training on extrications for those. And once they're done with extrication training, they get stripped down again, and they're used for burn testing out there. We're using these items as much as we possibly can. Everything that we have gets used that way. The 2 electronic board replacements for code, the 2 boards that exist still work. One would move to my office, one would move to the planning agency office, and the 2 new boards would go down to the code office. We're going to keep using everything until they don't work anymore. But I will keep that short for now. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on individual items in here. But I think the agency directors did a much better job this year at providing solid information that was asked for by our elected officials, and that will only improve year over year.
I can't tell you how refreshing it was to hear you outline your process for collecting the priorities from the directors and melding them together. That is such a huge improvement over the years we've sat through at COG and listened to 32 different elected officials debate those priorities. And so I think we're off to a great start. Why don't we, for efficiency, work backwards from what we have in here? Either we can do this by council member, or, well, let's just do that. Let's start with Rich. Thoughts in general on the line that Adam has drawn and what he's included in it?
No, I think Adam's done a good job following up on the good job of the good job of the good job and everything. So, needless to say, I've had a lot of looks at this and a lot of input.
That's why you're going first.
Well, that's actually why I'd like to go last.
Okay, all right.
That's actually why I'd like to go last.
Then we'll start with Tracy.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. It's a lot. So for me, this is like my second year in council, and it was a lot to absorb. I will say, from what I've read and from being at the HR meetings and different things that I've been a part of, that I felt like, I'm echoing everything that everyone else is saying, that you've done a great job at prioritizing based off of what you've heard. I think that you bring understanding and you are reflective, and I feel like from what we've seen as our executive director, you have done a great job so far. And I admire Adam's ability to do what he's done for so long. So I'm saying all that to say that I trust what Adam has pulled out and presented to us, and I'm in support of it, as well as wanting to hear from my fellow colleagues concerning this a little bit more. I would like to gain a little more in-depth understanding, but based off of what I've been a part of so far, I think that the approach was very thoughtful. Is a great job. I think Adam always outperforms And I'm not just saying that because I'm here, just hearing things from other municipalities, not locally, just being a part of other different things and seeing how they run. I think we do a great job here. I'm very proud to be a part of COG as well as College Township. So I just think that it was just a good job. Thank you.
Yeah, you're right, Tracy. This can be extraordinarily overwhelming, but this is a lot less overwhelming this year than it has been in the past. The focus is a little bit narrower thanks to what's been done already, so.
Yes.
We are going to push for further narrowing in the future. I'm going to be asking each of our committees, the authority, the library board, in future years to take much harder looks at every proposal that comes to them. Everything that is in here has been vetted by one group or another. What we found though is that nothing gets said no to in those processes. And I would like for more to be said no to early on. It saves work on our end in developing even further, and it will help you all as well in narrowing down before we get to this stage. We will improve every single year. That is certainly a next step for us.
I think it's important to understand no doesn't mean completely no. It just means not now. There's something else better that we need to focus on. And I think that there's a lot of people that are involved that understand that concept. And I think that that's why I'm comfortable to say that it is a good job that has gone forward.
Thank you.
So I have nothing else to say.
Okay.
Or no questions.
How about Dustin?
Yeah, so I have a couple questions on the process and what's been presented. All right, so if I look at the municipal comment guide, right, these are Adam's comments, not our consensus
These are
comments.
Adam's comments.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have not done the exercise of going through and providing consensus comments yet, correct? Okay. So are we going to do that, like line by line, block by block, or what do you want to do?
That's what I was asking, what would be more efficient? But I wanted to make sure there wasn't anything missing, big picture.
Okay.
For example, are we okay with the $1 million line?
Well, that was my second question.
Because,
Yeah, how did you arrive at setting $1 million line?
It was completely subjective. I say it was completely subjective. It is a subjective number that I used. The 2025 budget, the COG budget, our obligation to COG, represents roughly 25% of our municipal budget, okay? And again, trying to do a little bit of projection, in terms of next year's revenues. You know, I think I have some idea of where those revenues are going to ultimately shake out. And remember, next year is going to be a little bit different budget year because we're going to have some different revenues to try to anticipate and try to figure out where things are going to begin to shake out. So on all that, taking all that into consideration, I thought that an additional $1 million, because these do not represent operational increases in terms of salary and wage increases, benefit increases, et cetera, et cetera. These do tend to capture additional personnel or personnel reclassifications, for example, but there are other operational costs that are going to increase in 2026 in addition to the actual capital expenditures. So my thought was, I know there's going to be an increase. I know what the COLA looks like. I know that we've changed the process. And I know that I'm waiting any day now, probably was today or yesterday, was
2.7%.
2.7. Okay, very good. It was 2.6 at the end of May.
2.4 at the end of May.
2.4, okay. I knew I looked it up, I couldn't remember.
Largest increase we've seen in the last year.
Okay, so 2.7%. So we know that the COLA itself is going up 2.7. So we've already got that kind of baked into virtually everything that we're doing already in the COG budget for 2026. So it's a very long answer to your question, Dustin, but all things taken together, I simply arrived at, I thought that the $1 million mark was reasonable, and that the 17th item on this list, that in the rank order, was a $350,000 project. I thought that that would push the funding beyond what I thought might be reasonable.
Okay, so there's some science behind that.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's, other questions that aren't specific to Adam's comments like that, and then we'll go into tweaking any of the comments.
Just confirming one other element of it. So that's not College Township's impact. 1 million is not College Township's
We are
impact.
25.
correct.
So
whatever.
we're at 16.33% roughly, just ballpark and everything. So it's about 160. If all of that went through, it'd be around 160,000 or something.
Correct.
Yeah, so just making sure that's.
So Susan and Rich, questions beyond the comments on this, like we just talked about, big picture format questions, and then we'll come back and see if we have a consensus on the comments. Want to make sure we're not adding any or subtracting any before we go into the comments.
For me, this was much easier. This was much easier to look at. I appreciated the reference to the prologue. I appreciated the descriptions of the departments that each of the staff gave. I'm most familiar with public safety because that's where I spent my time. So it was very helpful to read about the other departments and to get that level of detail so I could approach the budget request. So thank you, and thank staff for all the work that got done. It was really a huge difference. And I went through Adam's comments as well and looked at those and tried to look at those with the COG rankings and with the agency director rankings, which were also very helpful. I also appreciated your taking a 30,000-foot view because I still can't. So looking at that and then going back down and looking at each of the departments and each of the comments and then looking at the mission and what people needed to do, these all made sense. So I don't have much in the way of say a disagreement with the rank order. I also appreciate that this is not a final discussion, but it will make the final decisions a lot easier. The only comment I had was coming from public safety. There were no requests from the emergency management side. And so, I don't know, certainly given some of the circumstances that we've seen, and we've seen some changes in the weather patterns, things like that, at some point, this didn't come to the committee. And I understand that, and it makes sense. But in the future, would this be something that comes to the committee for discussion? But that needn't necessarily be a yes or no tonight.
Yeah, anything, even if it touches multiple committees, it goes through each of those committees. So if, Jonathan was to have a proposal for a change to emergency management, yes, it would flow through that public safety committee before going anywhere.
And I think this will also make it easier in the absence of a request to ask, is there no request and why? Because sometimes the absence of a request is unnoticed when it feels very chaotic. This is not chaotic. If there's no request next year, that presents an opportunity to ask why.
One municipality has already done
So it was
that
great.
very thing where there were no requests.
Yep.
And their comment there was, why were there no requests?
Right.
In the specific area.
So very helpful. Thank you.
So you can add us to that list for that particular, in that area.
So thank you.
Rich, before we get into the individual comments?
Right, so if no, say no, is a policy and everything. Emergency contingency, you're going to see that because the fund balance, we identified that some stuff in there. The biggest thing is, this is just another tool for staff to move towards the ultimate goal, which is an approved summary budget. So philosophically, we probably support everything on this page, but we can't afford it. It is the reality. So it's a tool that enables them to work through and everything. I love Ben saying we're going to get a little bit better every year. I've been saying that for a while because it's all we can do and everything. It's not. This was a huge jump. This was a huge lift in the migration from the old program plan and separate CIP to one consolidated document that comes in, and the prioritization is exactly what was required. That's what Adam has to do for us, through the course, and hopefully we give him the tools to know where our head's at. And I think some of the things we voted on at General Forum have helped that, provided some guidances. We're creating policies where there wasn't any to try to help that. All those kind of things. All those things add up to a better process. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a process and everything. So I've appreciated being along for the journey.
Ben, I think it's not going to show up in the comments, but I think one of the consensus comment from this group is the appreciation for the process and the migration to something that happens a lot in the real world, but hasn't happened in COG for a long, long time. Susan's comment really struck me because she said, I'm not in a position to prioritize these. Well, the 32 elected officials aren't. But it hasn't stopped them in the past. And this process will help rein some of that in, because as Rich said, we philosophically support it all. But we only know we can afford this much. We want you to tell us, what is it that if we have this much money are the most pressing priorities? So we may not get consensus among the other 4 or 5 municipalities involved with our consensus, but this process of starting at that point and doing it that way, I think is extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah.
So there's the unwritten comment for tonight.
That could be a general comment. Can we lead off with
A general comment.
We have a place for that?
We'll make a place.
We can make one.
Well,
The first comment will be, leave a place for general comment.
There you go.
yeah, I mean, Eric, I really appreciate that comment and recognizing the prioritization is where we falter, right? And so, I'm kind of like, should we even get into the comments guide? Because you're looking at them one at a time, and fundamentally what Rich said, yeah, we support all of it, right?
Right.
If I'm looking at them individually like that, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, right? And that's what we fell into in the past. Great idea, let's do it. Oh, wait, we can't afford all of it. So is it even worthwhile going through that, or just saying, hey, the rankings make sense and here's our number?
Yeah, it may not be, and I was going to come around to that because most of our comments were answered by Ben because it said, I don't understand why this wasn't a higher priority. Well, you answered that at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because you weaved that into the overall and decided that it wasn't. It didn't meet the threshold.
This is very, very clearly done. The agency directors give you what they want for the agency. You look at the big picture and come back and then give us the priorities. It's much easier to approach something and say, I really disagree with that, than to try to figure out how to put it all together and rank it, so.
So other than Adam's missing comment in the first one, it sounds like we're building around building a consensus around what the manager's prepared for us.
I just wanted to point out that I think you'll see here, because I don't think there was anything that was listed on these 49 items where my comment was no.
No.
Right? I mean, I didn't make any negative recommendation. In a lot of cases, we support it as written. Those are the ones that, tallied up to just less than $500,000 kind of a thing. And everything else was, we acknowledged the need, but then there was a question about why the agency perhaps did not rank something as high as what we might otherwise have done.
Right.
But yet, every agency has some of their some if not more than a few of their top rankings identified in what we have indicated, what I had indicated in these preliminary comments, is things that we absolutely would fund. So I think, my opinion is it's up to Ben to continue to work with his agency directors to help them refine how they do their rankings. And that's an even bigger task going forward. And I couldn't agree more with the comment that Rich made about the absolute light year leap that we have made here with the SIGI, right? SIGI, not SIGI.
Should we share the other version?
SIGI works.
The first version we ever heard?
But anyway, it's a light year leap from where we have been in past years. And the combination of both the program plan and the CIP, I think, is extremely beneficial. Even though there's a lot. In years past, there was so much more. And let me comment further on that. When your COG staff spends virtually 8 months out of any calendar year working to put together 3 documents, where's the efficiency in that? Where's the value in that? And so this, again, light year leap, very important improvement. I'm sorry, I'm done.
I'm sure Ben and Kimberly did not mind hearing that.
Drop the mic.
Yeah.
So then, if there is no further comment, then we are going to rally around the manager's comment, even with the blank comment under number 1.
I'm sure we'll come up with something.
Yeah, can we ask that something be come up with?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what I rally around is I'm in total agreement with Adam's, $1 million threshold. I think that makes sense, right? He obviously went into some thought on that, and so, that with Ben's ranking, I'm behind it.
Since Dustin brought it up, I will say, though, that if you get the other 5 municipalities and they want to include the Hessfield lighting in the cutoff, and it aligns with the work that's being done with the master plan and doesn't get, I don't think, because, Rich said it, this is the $1 million, our share of the $1 million can be $160,000.
There is some wiggle room here for that gap in that one of the top priorities here will be that duty officer vehicle for the Alphas. But if you also look through the code agency items, they would like to replace the F-350 for the trailers with an F-450 or an F-550. That 350 would then move over and become that duty officer vehicle for the next several years. And so that would delay the need to purchase a new one, which saves, I believe it's about $109,000 from there, which would go back into the tally. And there, while the Hessfield lighting, that provided a wide range of, I believe it was like $5,000 or $5,400 to $300,000. It's because there are 3 separate options that are being provided for in there. Just taking down the bad lights and living with no night games in the region, taking down the lights and putting up new lights, knowing that when we move the fields around to match the master plan, we have to pick those lights up and move them somewhere else. Or taking those lights down and putting new lights up out at Oak Hall where they would stay in place, and then when we do the full work on Hessfield, you put the lights up there permanently. So there are options being provided. That's why you have such a wide range in there. But we can get you about another $109,000 with the code purchase of the F-450, F-550.
Cool.
All right. Any further comments? This was noted as a potential action item. Is it important that we endorse this with official action?
The assignment from the COG General Forum was to provide consensus comments back to the executive director by tomorrow.
By tomorrow?
Well,
Yes.
the 18th, yeah. And so our meeting schedule just kind of worked out. This is the last hurrah. That's why Ben's been to 5 other municipalities before us. So I would recommend that we simply move to provide the comments as
written.
proposed or as submitted, and move on from there.
Do I have that motion?
As long as number 1 gets a comment, that's.
I've got
What's the
one.
comment?
I could tell you what the
Thank
comment
you.
would be.
Why?
The comment for number 1 would be acknowledge the need, but ranking too low.
All right. So I think Rich made that motion contingent on his acceptance of your comment.
That is correct.
And all I need is a second.
Second?
This is an action item, so we need to provide opportunity to comment before we vote. And that comment could be extended to Ben and/or Kimberly. I'm not seeing.
Do we want to talk some more?
Since you're the only ones left tonight. All right, then, hearing nothing, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Again, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Kimberly.
One follow-up comment. The other thing, goal in this, publishing the schedule and stuff, and getting these two comments to staff was so that staff could appropriately respond to them in time before it goes forward to the general forum.
I think they won't be spending a lot of time on their responses to our comments then.
Some of our peers make up for us, so.
I've heard.
Thank you.
It's a good thing we're last, right?
The comments should fit in the comment box, right?
That's a good point.
That should be a
That's
guideline.
another comment.
That's a
That's a
comment.
comment.
So, in the comment guidelines, there is a word limit that is provided this year.
No, that's good.
150 words, right?
150 words per municipality. And I also told Adam yesterday, I said I was looking at College Township as my ride into Paris on the last day of the Tour de France. So this is the cruise at the end. So thank you all.
Absolutely.
It's now your turn to drop the mic with that comment.
Yes.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Yes, thank you.
He leaves us with flattery.
Yes.
Come back often, Ben.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, that concludes NB1. Kimberly can go to bed and Ben can go home, and we will move on.
Ben's going to Paris.
Time to start rehydrating. That takes us to NB2, Thompson Woods Preserve, request for allocation of funds. The request is pretty straightforward. This will require action. Does staff have anything to add on top of Mr. Keogh's request?
I'll just acknowledge this is a product of continued good discussion amongst the governance committee. We're looking at this as also an opportunity to re-engage our advisory committee because they've been pretty dormant for the last year and a half, roughly. Again, request pretty self-explanatory. 2025 budget actually has $16,000 in it for Thompson Woods Preserve, and $5,000 of that was dedicated towards update of management plan. This is a critical piece of that.
Okay. Have we always divided those costs by acreage? Have we used that same?
Now, that's a product of the intermunicipal cooperation agreement,
Okay.
and it's simply a ratio based on ownership.
Just a process question. Do we really actually have to take action if it's already approved in the budget?
Well, no, but I think given the status of Thompson Woods and the
Fair
efforts that
question.
we have made to try to put some organization around it, I think it's at the very least an appropriate gesture.
Okay.
It's professional courtesy.
It's professional courtesy.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I would add is it's based off of a verbal cost estimate provided by Mr. Wolf, and his range was 25 to 5,000, so it may come in well under that number.
All right. Any further questions for staff on what we're being asked for? So if that's the case, the chair will entertain a motion to authorize the payment as requested, or authorize
Our portion.
Are you thinking a not to exceed 5,000 maybe, just in case it comes in differently?
Well, but then going back to your comment,
Yeah,
if we
don't need to.
budgeted.
Just support it.
Yeah,
We
we
just
we
say
support, conceptually, we support spending the money on the update. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just acknowledging that we can't approve money out of the borough,
Yeah.
we're only
Our
approving our share.
That sounds like a motion, doesn't it?
Yes.
All right. So I have a second?
Second.
All right. It was moved by Tracy and seconded by Tracy. No,
Well
it was
done.
Moved by Rich, seconded by Tracy.
So the motion we're saying is to support our share for the Thompson Woods, whatever this is called.
Yep.
Yeah,
All right.
Proposed expenditures.
yeah.
Okay.
You can piece the motion together out of that, right? Okay. No disagreement here. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. There is nothing left on the agenda, other than staff informatives, is staff need to inform us any further beyond what is in the packets?
The only thing I wanted to mention was that you have a pretty comprehensive report, and we had indicated we were going to be bringing this back from time to time, roughly quarterly, both traffic signal grants and the traffic signal projects. And as you can see, there's a lot of activity. But Amy and Frank do a great job with these. But this is to simply keep you in the loop and informed. There's a number of grants that you often, through the consent agenda, authorize we as staff to submit for. A lot of those happen to be related to traffic signal grants and programs that we can tap into. And so I think this is a good way to show council kind of the fruits of the labor, so to speak, in terms of the number of grants that we are able to secure and the type of work that we're doing once we have those funds in hand. So that was all, just a simple draw your attention to that.
Questions for staff on the staff informatives? If not, we'll move to council other matters. Council staff other matters. Anything from staff that would fall under that? Adam?
I do have one thing. I did not bring this up during the additional agenda item because it may or may not become an additional agenda item. But all of you are likely aware that there is an effort to attract Breeze Airways to have regular flight service out of the State College Regional Airport. And that's an effort that's engaging the CBICC, the Happy Valley Visitors Bureau. There have been funds that have been put forward by those organizations, again, to, if you will, sweeten the pot in terms of securing that air service from this particular provider. And in addition to HVAB and CBICC, I am aware that the Airport Authority has contributed toward that, as has Benner Township and Bellefonte Borough. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that this is a project, or this is a process that has moved. The opportunity presented itself very quickly, and it has moved very quickly. And it did not in any way comport with our meeting schedule over the last 30 days. So I am curious as to whether or not there is any interest on the part of College Township to making a modest contribution toward that same pool of funds. We have funds available in the 2025 budget under our capital reserve funds, and these are actually residual funds from other economic development allocations that we have made. And if I was going to make any kind of a suggestion or a recommendation on an amount, I would say an amount not to exceed $5,000 would be something that would be appropriate for College Township to consider. If in fact the council chooses to consider this, I would recommend that we make this a topic, an agenda item on our next meeting for formal approval.
Okay. And any objection to at least considering this at the next meeting?
As long as we get the information. It does seem vast, and so that's helpful. I've learned a little bit about it, but I'd like to know more.
Well, we should have all got the email asking,
I got the email for us to sign the petition and.
Yeah, to project how many trips you want.
Yeah, it's just, little pieces coming fast, so.
Just for context, how much did we pledge for the Charlotte service several years ago to attract a different airline?
It was, College Township pledged $10,000.
Now, that was different service. That was different to an international hub, not.
Correct.
So I think the impact was substantially different than a Breeze Airlines. So it seems as though your suggestion is proportionate to the benefit or compared to what we did for Charlotte. Okay. It sounds like there's a consensus to bring this back for consideration.
I mean, just that information is helpful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Then council, other matters. I will close then with just a quick reminder that for those of you who are geeky about transportation things like I am, the long-range transportation plan open house is next Tuesday. There's 2 sessions.
It's the event of the week.
3 to 4:30 and 8 to 7:30. I think it's at the place in Bollesburg. Is that where it's at?
Fire hall?
The Wyndham?
No, yeah. No, I'm sorry. It's at the COG meeting, General Forum Meeting Room. And just for note, this is the plan list that we need to update every 5 years. And this is a list we draw projects from and put on the tip when we find out how much money we have to spend. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's next Tuesday afternoon. Be there. Anything else from council? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Tracy. We are adjourned.
Great meeting.